بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا تأويل وجعلنا من خير أمة سيدنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. We seek Allah's protection from knowledge that does not benefit, from a heart that has no khushu, from a nafs that's never had enough, from an eye that does not tear, from a dua that's not heard. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Apologies for the slight delay in start, or just like a last minute trying to create a kind of map for you for today's lesson to hopefully kind of make it easy for you to picture the events. Before we start, as I've been doing for the past few weeks, please ask everyone to please remember the people of Palestine in your du'as. It is truly a difficult time for them. A lot of suffering. I mean, day by day, the stories that are coming out are horrific. So please remember them in your du'as and continue speaking out about it. At the end of the day, you're speaking out for the innocent. What are you saying is that we don't want innocent people to be killed, murdered. So that's kind of just raising the awareness. I think that's more than anything, you're raising the awareness, and I think that's important. Don't feel shy in that, in speaking out about that. And there's nothing wrong in kind of mentioning what's happening. The facts are there. Okay, the facts are there, mentioning what's happening. So please remember them in your dua. If you can assist anyone through charities, events, etc., by all means, please do so. Okay, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. So if we continue with today's lesson, so last week we spoke about the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ to Habiba. Okay, we went into detail about that. Before that, we had spoke about Hudaybiyah, effectively a non-aggression pact between the Muslims and the Quraysh. And what Hudaybiyah did was Hudaybiyah allowed the Prophet ﷺ to secure the southern flank of Medina and not worry about the Quraysh marching against them. Okay, Surah Fatah was revealed after this, and it promised a great victory. Okay, that was to come. Now remember, they set out to perform Umrah, but they didn't. Okay, so returning to Medina, there was a kind of a period of relative peace. Okay? And again, we spoke last week about the return of the migrants from Abyssinia, or those that were remaining. Okay, the return of those. So you have this kind of treaty with the Quraysh, who, remember, were considered Ahlullah. And this is, and I've stressed this point throughout the Seerah, how highly regarded the Quraysh were. Okay, they kind of saw themselves as the elite. Okay, and how others came across, and others saw them as well. Okay, so they were considered to be Ahlullah, the people of Allah. Okay, they were considered a special tribe in Mecca. They were the guardians of the Kaaba. They had a kind of tremendous prestige among the tribes of Arabia. Okay, so what happens now then? Now you have this treaty, which was only initially meant to kind of stop the Muslims from performing Umrah, stop the Muslims from entering Umrah, because the Quraysh realized, no, there's no chance we can let them enter. Look what's just happened. We've had these battles. There's Khyber, one of the most difficult battles. Khyber, the siege. All of this has just taken place. Okay, all of this has just taken place, and now they're coming along, and we're just going to let them enter. No. That's like, again, it was about their pride and all that. We can't allow that. So that's what the purpose of it was, just for them not to perform Umrah. So the idea was, okay, the agreement was that you won't perform Umrah this time round. Come back next year, we'll clear the area for you. You can perform Umrah. So they saw that as a win for them. Okay, they saw that as a win for them, and we went into quite a bit of detail about that over the past few weeks. But then the treaty was kind of extended with the kind of non-aggression pact, etc. Okay, and by signing the treaty, the Quraysh kind of have now accepted, okay, and shown the whole of Arabia that they see the Muslims as a power. Okay, they see the Muslims as a power, you know, like a state or whatever you want to call it, so who they see as equals, because you don't sign treaties with your inferiors. Okay, so they see them as equals. Okay, this kind of message has gone out there now that, you know, that they're signing treaties, signing pacts with the Muslims now, whereas previously it was a case of, you know, kind of just brush them aside. They don't exist. You know, you can't even talk to us. You know, that kind of arrogance they had. Okay, so seen in this light, that, you know, what's happening now, that you know, the Muslims are now being recognized. Seeing this light, the Prophet ﷺ took some steps. Okay, he took some steps. What he did was he sent out messages. Okay, so what today's lesson calls it, you know, deputations to the kings. Okay, so he sent out now messages to the kings of the surrounding empires. Okay, and kind of this harks back to the vision of the Prophet ﷺ, where he saw at the trench. You know, remember we had that event on at the trench where you had that big rock that no one could move. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ, you know, it's like something we can't do. Call upon the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ came along, and he kind of, you know, and he struck the rock 3 times. Okay, and every strike kind of lightning struck. You know, so you had kind of going from, you know, one direction to another direction. So, you know, you had Yemen, Persia, and Sham. You know, Byzantium. All of these kind of, you know, all that story around that, and the success he will get. You know, the victory he will get. And this is what kind of kicks off that prophecy coming true. Okay, so he sends, so he kind of sends them out. He goes to delegation. He sends them out to the Khosrow, the king of Persia. You know, via his Western Yemen, basically. You know, he sent out to Emperor Heraclius via the Roman governor of Syria, and the Muqawqis, the Coptic ruler in Alexandria. Okay, so what also he did was also he sent letters, where the Prophet letters were sent to letters of diplomacy to Abyssinia, Damascus, Yamama, Oman, and Bani Ghassan. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ kind of sends out some of his most eloquent and handsome Sahaba to act as a bond. So just quickly, this is what literally in the last half an hour I quickly rushed to try to create this, so you understand the surroundings and what the Prophet ﷺ was doing and where he sent out these delegations. So let me just quickly show you this. I was initially finding difficulty to try to find a map with no like a blank map. So ignore kind of, you know, some of these kind of lines are kind of created at the moment because this is more of like a modern map. But what you can see is obviously you've got Medina there and you've got Mecca. Okay, so the 3 kind of ones in green are kind of the main ones. I mentioned how kind of delegations were sent out, but then also other kind of letters were sent out to the rest. So you've got Egypt, you know, the Romans, Persia, okay, and then all the other places I mentioned as well. Okay, so this is what was done, and then obviously you got Yemen down the bottom there. Abyssinia, you can see, you know, where that was kind of as well at that time. So here you get a bit of an idea how the surroundings were, and then how the Prophet ﷺ then kind of sent out these letters, these messages to those around him. Okay, to those around him. Hopefully that's useful to kind of picturize what's going on. Okay, so first of all, so like I said, that the Prophet ﷺ kind of sends you know, some of his most eloquent and handsome Sahaba to act as ambassadors. Okay, and this is actually a point here, because the Prophet ﷺ would do this, like eloquent and speaking nicely. And this is one of the things for Muslims, how we present ourselves, how we speak, dressing nicely, okay, presentable, because it shows Muslims in a good light, okay. Like it's makruh for you to kind of just be all messy and just like wear kind of messy clothes, etc., and all that, because it's not showing Muslims in good light. So this is the thing. The Prophet ﷺ would do this even when delegations would come to him. How he would going to be present himself. Okay, it was important. Okay, all of these things were important. So anyway, the responses. So first of all, as I just mentioned, that the reason I was showing Yemen, because Yemen was under the control of, as it was at the time of Abraha, under the control of the Christians. Okay, so Yemen was like a colony. Okay, but it had its own kind of government, etc. When the messenger came to the Khosrow, who was the emperor of Persia, he kind of flies into a rage. Okay, he insults the Prophet ﷺ. He doesn't send a message to the Prophet ﷺ himself, but tells his Yemeni client, like kind of client king, to send a message to Medina. Okay, to send a message to Medina that will not be accepting anyone else's authority. Okay, so the message is sent to the Prophet ﷺ. So kind of like I say, a delegation, ambassadors, etc. They set off and they go to Medina, to the Prophet ﷺ. When they arrive, the Prophet ﷺ tells them. Okay, so before they say anything to him, now remember the journey. I mean, messages would take months and spend even a year. It takes so long to get messages across. Okay, so when they arrived, before they could even say anything, the Prophet ﷺ says to them that, before they can mention what the Prophet was saying, etc. The Prophet ﷺ says that, your emperor, he has been killed, or the king, he has been killed, overthrown by his own son. Okay, just the night before. So the Prophet ﷺ is giving them news. Okay, this is what you come with all the messages, etc. But this is what's happening in your your head office, your headquarters. Okay, your emperor, your king has been overthrown by his son. He had imprisoned his son, but he had been overthrown by his son just the night before. So the Prophet ﷺ was informed of this by revelation. Okay, so he tells the Yemenis, this is what's happened. Okay, and the Yemenis, obviously, they did not know this, and they did not know what to say. So what they did is they decided to return back to Yemen. Okay, they returned to Yemen. As they returned to Yemen, and it was confirmed that what has happened. Okay, and so at that point, the Yemenis send a message back to the Prophet ﷺ, and they accept the Prophet ﷺ as the Prophet of Allah and enter Islam. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ tells them to kind of continue with their kind of setup, however it is. Okay, a subsequent letter is then sent to the new emperor of Persia. Okay, so the kind of the son now. Okay, so a new letter is sent to the emperor of Persia. This was after sorry, not straight away. Let me just make it clear. This was done after the conquest of Mecca. Okay, this was after the conquest of Mecca. I'm just trying to give you a bit of an idea of what happens anyway. This was after the conquest of Mecca, and we'll touch upon it inshallah later on as well when we get there. But the emperor, he kind of tears up the letter, and the Prophet ﷺ said that just as, and this is a famous event, the Prophet ﷺ said that just as he has torn the letter, his kingdom will be torn into pieces as well. Okay, and this is what happens. Unlike the conquest of Byzantium and the conquest of Sham, which all happened in kind of one go, the Persian conquest happened bit by bit over 20 years. Okay, so the Muslim army would kind of capture some land, and it was almost like a case of they were driving them back. They're driving the Persians back, and this is at the time of the rule of Umar. They're kind of driving them back and almost don't know what to do. So as they continue, they just by accident they just continually are kind of capturing these lands. They're conquering these lands as they're going along. So slowly they're just like, and at that time the emperor was kind of being driven back, etc., until he had nowhere else to go, nowhere else to retreat. So this is what happened in terms of there. Okay. Then you have Heraclius. Heraclius was actually a general, as Caesar and Caesar did before him. He was a general that became an emperor. Okay, so he was kind of a decorated general that masterminded the Byzantium's defeat of the Persians. Now, if you remember, we've discussed this going back in the Meccan period, when the Persians defeated the Byzantiums. Okay, the Persians defeated the Byzantians, and the Quraysh kind of cheered as the Byzantiums were kind of the Byzantians were Christians, hence so kind of linked with the religion of the Muslims, and the Persians were pagans, hence kind of more linked to the Quraysh. So the Quraysh kind of cheered about this. Okay, and we have the Revelation Surah Rum. It revealed Alif Lam Mim. غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم. So the Byzantine Romans have been defeated. في أدنى الأرض, in the lands close by. Now, but literally, أدنى الأرض means the lowest part of the earth. Okay, it means the lowest part of the earth. In fact, the place where the Persians and kind of Byzantines fought was actually the lowest point below kind of sea level on the face of the earth. Okay. في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون. Okay, in the lands close by, but they after their defeat will be victorious. Okay, after the defeat will be victorious. في بدء سنين لله أمره من قبل ومن بعد ويومئذ يفرح المؤمنون. Okay, within a few, kind of within 9 years, to God belongs the command, the absolute judgment and authority. Okay, both before and after any event. And at that time when the Romans are victorious, the believers will rejoice. Okay, and we mentioned about this victory also. It was actually the day of the Battle of Badr. So they're kind of two signs of the inimitability of the Quran. First is the Quran giving news of the reality of the natural world, okay, the lowest point on earth. And then you have, second is the Quran giving news of future events. You know, not only the Byzantium's victory, but to the day, the victory of Badr. Okay, so it was Heraclius who masterminded the Roman victory. Heraclius was given the message. Now imagine the courts of, you know, Heraclius, how the courts of his were set up. You know, at time not kind of far removed from prophethood. So you have Jesus, that's about 600 years ago, and then you have a whole line of prophets before Jesus. You know, up to and included John the Baptist. So, you know, this kind of unbroken line, including John the Baptist, okay, who was at the same time as Jesus. You know, before that you have Zachariah, who was the father of John, you know, the father of Yahya. Okay, you still had kind of groups saying that Jesus was not God. Okay, Jesus was human. So don't look at kind of, you know, when we think of this, don't look at Christianity as we know it now, but more how it was at that time. Jesus was a prophet who spoke much about end of times and about the ones that would come after him. Okay, so now you're hearing from that area, you know, someone. So as in terms of the Prophet ﷺ, you know, Arabia, you're hearing that someone claiming to be a prophet. You know, interestingly, no one else at that time claims to be a prophet. You know, someone, although, you know, unlettered, although, you know, from Arabia, although he's not had any real experience with Christians, Jews, etc., yet who is kind of, so you got the Prophet ﷺ here, so they're thinking about someone who's not had interaction with Jews and Christians, yet he is citing the Jewish and Christian scripture. You know, not only kind of citing it, but correcting it. You know, who bears the hallmarks of a prophet, who has been given the same types of military victories like David and Solomon have been given. You know, who's, you know, like a who's like a David defeating Goliath. Okay. Now you get a message from the same person. Okay, so I'm just trying to get this picture that time, how it would have been. Okay, so you get this message from the same person to act as the emperor of the Romans, from Muhammad, the messenger of God. The message was that I urge you to submit to one God, to accept I am the messenger of God, and like kind of here's some basic arkan of Islam. And he says to me, if you do so, you will hold on to your kingship. Okay, it was not like the Prophet ﷺ is saying that he's taking his kingship, which actually is what would happen. Old kings, then what would happen is that you kind of the new their sons, etc., who have been trained, they come along. The old kings would say, you know what, they've been told that's enough now. Off you go to your monasteries, etc., become a monk. And that's what happened. When Caesar kind of pitched up, he said to him, look, here's your choice. Well, off you go to become a monk, or get your head chopped off. Which option would you take? Okay, so that's what would normally happen. But the Prophet ﷺ, the message he's sending out to them is like, look, keep your kingship, etc. This is what I want from you. Accept, submit to the one God, and accept that I am the messenger of God. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ gave the same message to all his rulers. Okay, you can rule, but you must believe in Allah and His messenger. And Heraclius inwardly believes, but when his court kind of go into uproar, he rejects the Prophet ﷺ's invitation. Okay, however, on a subsequent visit, later by Abu Sufyan, he confirms that the Prophet ﷺ was indeed a prophet. Okay, and later on his armies would fight the Muslims. Okay, so that's Heraclius. Then you had the next message was to Muqawqis of Egypt, Alexandria. Now, this was the capital at that time. Cairo had not been founded yet. So Muqawqis does not enter Islam, but he kind of sends back gifts to the Prophet ﷺ, and one of which would cause a little bit of trouble later on. Okay, Maria, the Copt, who bears the Prophet ﷺ's, his only son, okay, Ibrahim. So, Muqawqis kind of sends two sisters, Maria and Seerah. He sends them as concubines of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so that's the kind of situation when it came to the messages kind of sent out and the kind of responses given, because it was the duty of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the position that the Muslims were in at that time. Now it's like, okay, now is the right time. Messages getting sent out to everyone. Here you go. This is the situation. Okay, and what is it that do you accept it or not? Because you're giving everyone a chance. Here you go. The message was clearly sent out to you. Now it's up to you. Do you want to accept or not? Okay, so that's what happened. Now moving on, around about this time, a kind of different attempt on the life of the Prophet ﷺ was made. Okay, and this was done by a man called Labid. Okay, Labid, a Jewish sorcerer, the most kind of preeminent practitioner of the ancient art of sorcery, okay, ancient art of witchcraft. He had learned that he kind of learned this kind of in his tradition, okay, from its origins in Babylon. He passed this art on to his daughters. Okay, so he was based in Medina, and he received payment from Jews of Khaybar to put a kind of particularly powerful curse on the Prophet ﷺ. And the idea was to try and kill the Prophet ﷺ with black magic. Maybe the best way for us to understand is, this kind of voodoo, okay, a bit like voodoo, okay. So with his two daughters, they kind of magically assault the Prophet ﷺ. And kind of, what he does is he instructs his daughters to, who had kind of managed to get hold of the comb of the Prophet ﷺ. So what they do is, on the comb there was some, grains of hair of the Prophet ﷺ on it. Okay, so they took the hairs and they tied knots, and then they kind of blew on them with some spell. Okay, annafathati fil uqad. Okay, and if you look at, the Prophet ﷺ is told to seek refuge from, and if you look at the evil of the witches who blow on knots, because that's how sorcery was done. So whatever they used, the spell they did, I don't know whether they used a doll or whatever, they kind of they throw that into a well so that it's not discovered. And the Prophet ﷺ says, what happens? The Prophet ﷺ begins to suffer physical symptoms, okay, memory problems. He would get a fever. He would forget things, like he would say to, someone within the household, I told you to do this, and they would respond, we've already done it and we told you, or I told you to do this, why haven't you done this? But they would say, Ya Rasulullah, you did not tell us. These kind of things, these kind of things start to take place, and he would get fever, get ill, okay. Labid and his daughters were kind of probably slightly dismayed because they were probably expecting more than this. But it was the strength of the Prophet ﷺ that the black magic came across as kind of a rather kind of a bad bout of illness, effectively. Whereas we would kind of pass it off as an illness, that wasn't the case for the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, now picture this: the Prophet ﷺ, he would not get ill. 60 years old at this stage, and he was still strong, so strong. Just a couple of years ago, he was kind of splitting rocks with a handful of strikes. That strong men in their peak could not even budge. Okay, he would be able to kind of fast for days without breaking his fast, day and night without breaking his fast. You can say he had the body of like a 30-year-old, but at their peak. There was no fat, he was muscled, there was no kind of skin folds, which tend to happen as you get old, he's hanging down, etc. No, as normally happens when you get old. This was not the case for the Prophet ﷺ. Up until Surah Hud, he had no grey hairs. Surah Hud caused him to have a handful of grey hairs. Compare that to Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, who is only kind of 2 years younger than the Prophet ﷺ, and he looked his age. And it's like when the Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq saw the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Oh, Ya Rasulullah, you have white hair," and he was surprised. Like grey hair. Yeah, wait a minute, you're 2 years younger and you have so many, but this is how they saw the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, this superhero. Okay, he was surprised. Oh, you have white hair, Ya Rasulullah. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ says that, Surah Hud kind of, that's where the grey hairs came about from, the revelation of the surah. Okay, so like I said, this was something unusual. So it was so he was concerned. The Prophet ﷺ was concerned because he would not get ill. Okay, so what happens is he has a dream one night, and Jibreel al-Islam and Miqail al-Islam appeared at his bedside and talked to each other and explained what had happened, but also how to cure himself. Okay, so then you have the revelation of Mu'awwadatayn. Okay, the two surahs of seeking protection. Okay, Falaq and Nas. Okay, quickly go through them. So, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak. Okay, min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil of what He has created. Wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab, and from the evil of the darkness of night when it overspreads. Okay, now as darkness figuratively implies, as darkness figuratively kind of implies evil. A person can be a target of evil in the darkness more easily than during the daytime. Okay, also evil brings about, we have this as well, and I'll mention it later as well, actually. But we have these practices from the elders. It's like Sham or it's Maghrib time. Just before Maghrib, make sure you close the windows, close the doors, because we're instructed about that. And as we grew up, and your mom will probably shout that out to you, "Oh, Sham, what are you doing? The kids are outside, come inside," etc. And you're thinking, what's going on? What they're talking about? But this is kind of what brings about at that time the jinn and the evil kind of they come about. Okay, And you see it more and more, obviously, when you study the Seerah, when you study all of this, you see this come about. We kind of always think that we're so clever. Oh, they're just practices that they're kind of making up. But then when you see all these evidence, you kind of put you in your place. Okay. So evil begins like the disbelieving jinn usually come out when the darkness overspreads and becomes intense. So verse kind of warn us against the evil that may be done to us secretly, and to which we may be exposed in darkness, and which we may be done by invisible beings. Okay, the contrast in these verses is very beautiful in how they order us to seek refuge in God as the Lord of the daybreak. Okay, from the evil of darkness. Daybreak means light, and the light reveals secret schemes. Islam is God's light, which removes the veils of darkness from everything. Okay, وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ, and from the evil of the witches who blow on knots to cast a spell. Remember, sorcery and casting spell are as sinful as disbelief. Okay, disbelief. So this kind of practice, unfortunately, the widespread, especially. I mean, we always kind of point at South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., Afghanistan, whatnot. But you got in African countries, etc., and all that. It happens all over. Okay, we kind of stereotype, we kind of just target a certain area because we see it more, but it happens all over. Okay, that doesn't mean it's acceptable. What I'm trying to tell you is that it's happening, and it's unfortunate, and those that are involved in it need to be aware of this. Okay, need to be aware of this, how wrong it is, and you shouldn't be taking any, you shouldn't have anything to do with it. Or, it's for this and for marriage, or this and this person like me. There's so many things breaking, families or whatnot. They do trying everything, and the problem is majority of the time, those that you get them off have got no clue what they're doing. So they're doing incorrectly, and obviously it has not the effect that person wanted, as in whoever wanted in the first place, but then that the individual who you've done it upon, they start getting ill, etc. Okay, so you got all of that. You got all of that. So just bear that in mind, obviously, more and more. You should bear that in mind. Okay. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ, and from the evil of the envious one when he envies. Okay. Now the theme of this surah, or even kind of both surahs, is the needness of mankind. Okay. When you seek refuge, I am in need of protection because I cannot protect myself. So what you seek refuge from, types of evil that you can't protect yourself from. Okay, types of evil you can't protect yourself from. So the first surah is about general evil, exterior harm. And Surah Nas is about the interior harm. Okay, harm that comes from within. So Falaq, daybreak, or dawn, daybreak, because it's kind of what is daybreak? What it does, it splits up the darkness. It kind of strikes through it. When you see the dawn come on the horizon, what happens? It'll just appear on the horizon, and then it rises. So it splits up the darkness. Okay, it splits up the darkness. Also, daybreak is a sign of hope. As we are scared of the dark. Okay, deepest human fear is fear of the dark. Why? Because darkness is the absence of light, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is light. Okay? So it's the kind of manifestation of this attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, and what type of darkness? Min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab, deep, intense darkness. Okay, not starlit dark, not a kind of starlit, like starlit darkness is not darkness. Moonlit darkness is not darkness. It's like deep in a cave. Our teacher gave an example of their experience of darkness, and I'll use that because I was thinking about it, and I probably can't come out with a real experience of myself of like pure pitch black darkness. Okay, because there's always that kind of light element around. Okay, so what happened is that they're in a cave in South Africa, and the organizers wanted them to experience darkness. So what they do, they switch off the lights. Okay, and it's so dark that they can't see the way our teacher described it. He goes, it was so dark that he could not. You put your hand in front of your face, you could not see your hand. Okay, you could not see your hand, and people were kind of getting a bit scared, even though they knew that the lights will be coming on in a minute. The lights will be coming on in a minute. Okay. Why is darkness the primal human fear? Because it kind of reminds us of the absence of God. It kind of triggers a memory of our kind of beholding of the one who brought light to the heavens and the earth, and what that felt like, and what the absence of it feels like. Okay, so we seek refuge from every form of harm that He has created. Okay, every form He has created. Then you kind of specific, and you ask for protection from kind of these three specific things. Okay, these things you cannot protect yourself from. It doesn't matter if you're strong, weak, etc. You can't protect yourself from harm of absolute darkness, harm of sorcery, and harm of what you might call people's ill intention. Okay, harm of envy. Okay, when someone is envious of you, kind of they're not doing anything to you physically. So the three types of harm: of the physical, kind of someone punches you, kicks you, etc. You can protect yourself from that. Learn self-defense, etc. Pay a bodyguard or whatnot. Okay. Then you have magic, sorcery, jadoo, etc. You can't protect yourself in that way. Like you can't kind of physically. It's not like a physical harm. Okay. So your kind of martial arts, whatnot, will not protect you from that. Okay. Or they can harm you without even doing anything. It's almost like the harm kind of radiates from them. Okay, hasad is like this: when someone is envious to you, they might not do anything to you, they might not even want to do anything to you, but just that ill intention. Okay, so what is hasad? Hasad is like the desire that a blessing that you have is taken away from you. A blessing you have is taken away from you. So hasad is kind of different from jealousy. Okay, jealousy is to wish that you have, that you also had that benefit someone else had. That guy has a Ferrari. Why don't I have a Ferrari? Why can't I have what that person has? That's what jealousy is. The ruling of jealousy is that it's makruh for matters of the dunya, but it's recommended for matters of the akhirah. Pious person. Someone's a pious person. I wish I was pious. That person has tawfiq to read the Quran. I wish I had tawfiq to read the Quran. Okay, this kind of stirs you into action. Okay, so jealousy of the dunya is basically greed. Okay, so for spirituality from that side of thing, it's also greed. I wish I was in God's favor like that person is. Good, then do something about it. That's a desire to draw near to God, which is a praiseworthy action. Okay, or it's like a praiseworthy thing. So compete one another in good deeds. Some people are competitive, like me. So compete in drawing near to God. Okay. Envy, however, is more kind of resentment, okay, than greed. Malice. Okay, and this is haram for dunyavi things. Okay, and when it comes to envy for spiritual things, that person is pious. I hope they lose their iman. That borders on kufr. Okay, that borders on kufr. So the point here is that envy, not jealousy, but envy, resentment is ill feeling towards someone. That gives you a kind of, it gives you a bad aura, and your aura affects others. Hence we seek God's protection from it. Okay, so envy is like, they've got this blessing, and you wish that blessing is taken away from them. Okay, that blessing is taken away from them. Okay, so this surah, this verse is like a shield that protects you from the ill effects of other people's envy. Okay, then you move on to in Surah Nas, you only seek protection from one thing, and that's yourself. Okay, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, say I seek refuge in the Lord of humankind. Malikin nas, the sovereign of humankind. Ilahin nas, the deity of humankind. Min sharril waswasil khannas, from the evil of the the sneaking whisperer, the Satan. Alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, who whispers into the heart of humankind. Okay, min al jinnati wan nas, or of the jinn and humankind. Now this surah teaches us to be most alert to the temptations and secret kind of devices of Satan and Satan-like people. With all the means at their disposal, they will do their utmost to lead us astray from God's way into their own evil ways. Okay, to commit sins, to bring about dissensions among us. Okay, and to do other things, to cause us harm both in the world and the hereafter. The best way to be protected against the kind of devices and temptations is to believe in God as Lord, Creator, Sustainer, Master, and absolute Sovereign, who has the absolute right to rule us and who has the sole deity, as the kind of exclusive right to be worshipped. Okay, then we must kind of act according to this faith. So our teacher spoke about kind of the different meanings, but one of the most interesting ones he mentioned was that Khannas, from whom you seek protection, the one who whispers, is your jinn kareen. And then I suppose this is a topic on its own kind of thing. What is jinn kareen, etc. But so jinn kareen, who has effectively been inserted into you at birth, flowing around you in your bloodstream, etc. In that sense, it's both from jinn and from man. Okay, it's part of you. So jinn kareen is, everyone has a jinn kareen. Okay, we all have a jinn kareen. Okay, the way it's kind of described is he sits, his kind of head is there, kind of where your chest is, and he kind of like, as I'm sitting here, he'll be sitting kind of something like that. Your jinn kareen. I mean, it is it's a topic that you can speak so much about. But again, I have spoke about it previously, so if those that have kind of heard me speak about it, you'll kind of understand a bit more. But yeah, so this is it. So it's about jinn kareen. So both jinn and man is part of you, but it can also separate from you. It's a jinn, but it's so kind of intermingled with your nature that it becomes part of you. Okay, it becomes part of you. So this kind of shaitan does not whisper to you in second person. It speaks to you in first person. Okay, it's not the thought, so and so should not have said that to you, but it's so and so should not have said that to me. Okay, and this is the big trick of the shaitan. A French kind of philosopher said the biggest trick the devil has ever pulled is convincing the world that he doesn't exist. And the shaitan inside us is hidden and is hidden from us. And the way it hides from us is by talking to us through us. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ had converted his jinn kareen. He had him under control. We can't kill our shaitan. We can't. We can only kind of wrestle it down. And I remember our teachers giving the example that his sheikh gave me, that we can only wrestle our jinn kareen down. Keep him on the ground, keep him to the ground, keep him there. I don't think we can convert him. That was for the Prophet ﷺ, but keep him there, keep him under control. Okay, Surah Nas had nothing to do with the witchcraft. That was all Falaq, Surah Falaq. But at the same time, as you're seeking protection from other people, you're seeking to be protected from yourself, and you're seeking that other people are protected from you. Okay, so Surah Falaq and Surah Nas were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, who kind of recovered. And again, and I mentioned this earlier on as well, so it's always good when we're going through the Seerah, then there's certain things that come about. So here you go, we got an example of the Prophet ﷺ where black magic, jadoo, etc. was done on him. And what's the protection? Surah Falaq, Surah Nas. Okay, throughout our time, we're always talking about, read the three calls before we go to sleep. Or you do this, someone's ill, something like that. Surah Falaq, Surah Nas, blow on them, whenever you ask. So this is where it comes about from. When we were kids, or when you see elderly in the masjid or whatnot, after they finish the prayer, they blow on their hands and they start rubbing it over, and you look at it and thinking, oh, look at this guy, bidah, just inventing stuff. You realize the Prophet ﷺ, what he would do. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ, what he would do, he would read Surah Ikhlas 3 times. So kind of the difference kind of is doing, but some of our teachers spoke about, you're having your hands like this and actually reading into your hands. Others is you read and then you blow into your hands. But either way, so before you go to sleep, Surah Ikhlas 3 times, okay, and then one narration is Surah Falaq and Surah Nas 1 time each. The other one is Surah Falaq and Surah Nas 3 times each. But okay, so my recommendation that I'm going to do is Surah Ikhlas 3 times, Surah Falaq 3 times, Surah Nas 3 times. So you're reading into your hand and then you blow and then rub over your entire body, okay, before you go to sleep. Okay, this protection, these are powerful, powerful surahs, okay. And again, all of this is done for us. This is a mercy for us, showing us all this, subhanAllah, So, like I said, Surah Falaq and Surah Nas was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. Prophet ﷺ recovered. He was shown where the kind of whatever the doll or whatever was buried, the well, and the well was kind of drained, and that was kind of retrieved, and the kind of that well was kind of filled up, and another well was dug up somewhere else. Okay, Labid was kind of found guilty, but forgiven by the Prophet ﷺ. No further action was taken against him by the Prophet ﷺ. And look, this is the forgiveness of the Prophet ﷺ, because at times people used to always accuse, for example, the conquest of Makkah, when the Prophet ﷺ says everyone is forgiven. Oh yeah, the Prophet ﷺ would have done that because he's looking on the politics side, etc. But look at here, there wasn't political gain here. But yet still, even the fact that what he tried to do and his 2 daughters, the Prophet ﷺ still forgave him, and he kind of lived his life in Medina. He lived his life in Medina. So that was, you have the kind of messages that went around, and also when the Prophet ﷺ, when this, the black magic was done upon him, and you have these famous surahs that were revealed. And it's good to, alhamdulillah, to then, we spoke a bit about them, but it's good to understand, because pretty much everyone will know these surahs, because, it's those surahs at the end of the Quran that we've all kind of memorized. And it's good to know then how these came about and the reasoning behind them and how we can utilize them. Like I said, all the Quran, whatever part of the Quran you read, so much reward for every letter, so much reward. But here again, if people are, whatever reason, whatnot, kids are crying, not going to sleep, etc., or make a habit of your kids, if they're too young, then read the Qur'an like I've just explained to you and blow on them. Okay, and those that can, they already know them, that get into the habit of reading them and going through that process. And I've already spoke about, these are the things that you should be doing before going to sleep. Okay, inshallah, that's been useful for everyone. We'll leave it at that, and we'll continue inshallah next week. Wasallallahu alaihi subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.